Hey, welcome back to the Lead Up Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Harbour. This is episode 448. Really excited that you're joining me. If you're a returning listener, if you're new, thanks for tuning in. I want to go ahead and challenge you. Grab a notebook and grab a pen. I'm going to give you some challenges here to help you take your leadership to the next level. On the Lead Up Podcast, we equip leaders with the skills and strategies to become elite as a leader and build elite teams and foster remarkable cultures. Today, we're talking about a topic I know if you're in leadership, you've either encountered or you will encounter at some point. It's toxicity in the workplace. Hey, we have a lot of toxicity in the world right now, and it's bleeding into our workplaces like never before. And you may be thinking, I don't really have to deal with that. But I'm here to tell you, it can be one of those silent killers of your culture, of teamwork, productivity, all those things that are important to you as a leader that you're trying to move the needle on. So we're going to be talking about breaking down barriers and addressing workplace bullies. It's a big one. Toxic behaviors not only derail performance, but they create a ripple effect that can drive away great employees when you're in that retention strategy or even that attraction strategy that we talk about in my book, Quit Losing Talent. Bullies undercut trust. They harm organizational culture at its core. And I know you're working really hard to create culture that is a place where people want to stay. Subtle toxic behaviors or unchecked bullies are more common than we may believe in the workplace. I see it almost every place I go where there's some little silent killers in the workplace culture there that we need to make sure we address. Research in my book, Quit Losing Talent, I mentioned a minute ago. If you don't have a copy, go grab one at Amazon. Quit Losing Talent, get the expanded edition. That's the one where we have all the tools, tactics, strategies that can help you create a stay culture and attract better employees to your environment. But it shows that leaders play a pivotal role in identifying and dismantling these barriers. Now, you may be saying, that's not my job, or I'm not responsible for others' behavior and attitude, but you are. If you hired those individuals, you're responsible for coaching them up, creating alignment with the values and the culture that you want. If you inherited those individuals, your job is to coach them up, creating alignment with the values and culture that you're trying to create. I'm a believer in coaching up or coaching out. First, we want to start with the coaching up philosophy, but you've got to dig in. You've got to step into this. And I know most leaders do not want to do this. So today I'm going to walk you through how to spot signs of toxicity and share some actionable strategies you can implement to address and resolve these behaviors effectively. What we're going to cover: hidden costs of workplace toxicity, how to identify the signs of toxic behaviors before they escalate too far, and in some steps to confront and eliminate those workplace bullies while preserving harmony. As I said a minute ago, grab a pen and paper. I want you to take notes. This is going to be vital for you as a leader to take note on and maybe even do some more study and research on. When it comes to the word toxicity, what comes to mind for you? We often think of dramatic outburst or obvious misconduct, but in reality, toxic behaviors often fly under the radar. It can look like sarcasm disguised as humor, undermining remarks made in meetings, or favoritism that slowly chips away at trust. Let me talk about a toxic workplace behavior that I see oftentimes, especially in the healthcare arena. I've heard many, many times nurses say we often eat our young. Why do we do that? Why are we still doing that? If we know that's been a toxic behavior for years, why are we still allowing a toxic behavior that I often see with more tenured nurses or employees in general is, well, I had to learn it the hard way. Those new employees should too. Or that younger generation, they don't want to work as hard. They're not as bought in as we are. Look, that's toxicity. That's blaming, pointing fingers. It's bullying. It's micro bullying. It's not helping the next generation succeed. It's not making your job easier if you're one of those people that have said that before. So these little subtle behaviors can cost your organizations in ways that you may not see immediately. Productivity begins to decrease and maybe even grind to a halt because employees avoid working with difficult colleagues. They avoid them. They don't want to be around them. They don't want to talk to them. They don't want to be in the same sandbox with that individual. Disengagement begins to set in as trust in leadership erodes. Here's the key for you as a leader. You need to understand you're always going to get the you may not be responsible for others' behavior, but because you're the leader of the department, you're going to get the blame for not resolving these little microaggressions, this toxicity that's going on. Now, one of the things in my book, I talk about a C-squared conversation or a talent lock conversation. These are tactics that you should be implementing in your leadership to find out about these toxic behaviors before they get bigger than they need to be. Many people aren't going to come to you and share those things with you, but when you're stepping into that and asking the right questions and listening for what's not being said, watching your KPIs that may be affected by toxic workplace environments, you'll be able to begin to step into these and address them a little bit more quickly. Another thing is workplace disharmony is disrupted and everyone feels on edge. Look, fear is a great determiner of mistakes. It's no secret if you're in the healthcare space, healthcare mistakes are one of the leading causes of death in America. And when we have a place of fear, we're exacerbating the environment where we create mistakes because now people are afraid to step in and say, hey, you're doing that wrong, or you can't treat a patient that way. Look, that happens in the airlines industry. It happens in manufacturing environments as well. These are things that we need to understand as leaders, and it's our responsibility to step in and address those things. Here's a staggering data point for you. Research shows that nearly 50% of workers have encountered workplace bullying at some point in their careers. 50%. That means if you've got 10 employees, 5 of them have experienced bullying. If it's on your workplace, that means you've got 5 workplace bullies potentially on your team. That is a critical leadership area that you need to step into. Look, elite leaders find ways to step into these things and address them so you create cultures where it makes it easier for you to recruit. When you're recruiting talent, they're going to pick up on that culture. They're going to sense that. They're going to feel that in the interview process. See, these negative experiences are linked to higher turnover rates and burnout. And as I said, mistakes. From a lens of leadership, what's clear is this. If we allow toxic behaviors to simmer, we're creating an environment where even our best talent can't thrive. They're going to leave because you're not addressing. They're not leaving for more money. Look, I get told all the time, well, they're leaving for more money. No, they're not. They're leaving because the leader is not stepping in and addressing some of these workplace challenges they need to be addressing. Because the reality is they're going down the street maybe and taking a same or similar job for same or similar pay. That's the reality. They're not leaving you for money. They're leaving you because of culture that they're not comfortable in. Brene Brown says this: integrity is choosing courage over comfort. It's choosing what's right and what's fun. It's not choosing it's choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, or easy. I chopped that quote all up on it. But that's what elite leaders do. They step into those challenges with courage and choose what's right over what's fun or what's easy. Addressing toxicity isn't easy, but it's necessary for the long-term health of your team, of your organization, of your company. So now that we've talked a little bit about the cost, how do we start breaking down barriers and identifying problems? One mistake many leaders made is waiting for toxic behaviors to get out of control before they act, or waiting for that toxic person to just leave. The truth is, the earlier you identify these behaviors, I call stepping into it, shoveling the pile while it's small, the easier it becomes to course correct. Here are some signs that you need to take note of. Patterns of disrespect. Does someone consistently interrupt others in meetings? Do they roll their eyes during discussions? Small signs of disrespect create and can breed negativity if left unchecked. How about passive aggressive communication? Look for subtle frustrations expressed through sarcasm, exclusion in group discussions, or backhanded compliments. These behaviors tend to amplify over time. How about high turnover in an area? If there's consistent turnover or complaints within a particular team or department, it might indicate that there's a toxic personality driving people away. Look, I worked with one company a few years back, and they just kept having a constant churn of employees on the front line. And I had to get the senior leader involved to figure out what was going on. He was delegating leadership down to his manager of this area. I challenged this senior leader to get involved, to start having some conversations more at the front line. And what that senior leader found out is the manager was the bully. The manager was hiring people, running them off, hiring people, running them off, hiring people. And the senior leader was blaming the environment, blaming the culture, blaming the pay, blaming lots of different things that every company was facing at the same time. Ended up having to remove that manager from that department and decrease turnover basically to zero within a matter of weeks and months. Look, this is why you have to step in, but that's a sign. You need to recognize the signs so that you can step into them. What about this? Have you, these little cliques, have you noticed workplace cliques form? Groups that exclude others or create silos often signal deeper issues within workplace harmony. One of those cliques is our existing team or more tenured people and our new employees or less tenured people. Your job as a leader is to blend those two groups together as quickly as possible. When you bring new employees on, you should be getting involved as a stay ambassador. You learn more about that in my book, Quit Losing Talent. You should be getting involved as a stay ambassador to make sure these two groups blend together and create success for all parties involved. It's important to foster the self-awareness as a leader. And ask this, where am I enabling? Where am I enabling or overlooking these dynamics? Look, the first step for leadership is just to admit that maybe you are part of the problem. And that's hard to address as a leader within ourselves because it's easy to point at external factors. But as a leader, we are part of the problem. We are also part of the solution by stepping in and having conversations that we need to have. Toxicity thrives in silence, and it's up to you to shine a light on behaviors that harm growth. Simon Sinek said this, leadership's not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. That's where elite leadership comes in, is stepping into these things, not avoiding them. Identifying toxicity is step one. Step two is taking steps to dismantle. And then we have to confront and resolve toxicity. This is what every leader dreads. Not one person, not one leader I've ever worked with likes doing these things, including me. But confronting and resolving these toxic behaviors is critical for your success as a leader and for your team to thrive and stay with you. Here's the truth. Leading a team means having hard conversations when it matters most. I'm going to give you 3 clear steps that you can take to create and confront, to create this environment where you're able to confront toxicity directly and with grace, which is important. Number 1, create a zero tolerance policy for toxicity. Gossip, I always say some companies have these 3 strikes and you're out on certain behavior. When I'm onboarding people onto my team, I'm saying you get 1 strike when it comes to gossip, and that 1 strike is right now because we're having the conversation. So I'm creating a zero tolerance policy when it comes to gossip. On day 1 with a new, if we've got an issue with someone, we need to go with them. We need to bring it to the leader so the leader can begin to step into it. We don't talk about each other, about anybody on this team. We don't say anything to anybody we wouldn't say to the leader or to that person to their face. We don't say it to anyone else. That's creating this zero tolerance policy. It's one of the most effective ways to minimize toxic behavior. And establishing that up front early on, if that's important to you, spelling out what's acceptable and unacceptable behavior creates a clear standard for everyone to follow. When you roll this out, communicate that the policy isn't punishment, but a way to create a thriving environment for everyone. And then be consistent with enforcement. Action must be the same for everyone, regardless of their title, tenure, or even their ability to perform at a high level in certain times. I mean, we can talk about lots of professional football programs that, because I'm a football fan, where you've had a toxic player, great output, bad for the team and the team culture. Here's a second step for you. Address issues privately and directly. Confront those toxic individuals in private conversations. This approach minimizes embarrassment for them, but it shows that problematic actions won't be ignored. Here's a structure for you from my coaching practices that can guide these conversations. One, share what you've observed. Don't make generalities. I've noticed you've interrupted Sarah multiple times during the meeting or when she's trying to give feedback. Explain the interruption. Explain the impact. This disrupts team collaboration and shuts down valuable input, not only from Sarah, but from others that see you do that. And then ask for accountability. How can we work on ensuring respectful participation in the future? What is your solution? I want to create the solution coming from that individual so they're more likely to hold themselves accountable. It's essential to speak from facts, not interpretations, not third party. You need to observe some of these things and then remain solution focused. And then here's the third step for you. We need to reinforce positive behaviors. I'll always say what gets celebrated gets replicated. So one of the ways to tackle negativity is by amplifying positive leadership behaviors. I'm a big believer in knowing, memorizing, understanding at a deep level your values and what behaviors model those. And then when you see someone living those out, you reinforce that positive behavior. This helps them demonstrate respect, collaboration, mentoring others, and helps you create a fair and equal way to hold others accountable. Do it both privately and publicly when you reinforce those behaviors. Stephen Covey said, what you do has far greater impact than what you say. So what does that mean for you as an elite leader? You can't just talk about these concepts that I'm sharing with you today. You've got to step into action. People believe what you do, not just what you say. They certainly won't trust what you say if it isn't followed up by action. Toxicity begins to fade when your team sees that you consistently value and reward positive contributions and you step in to challenges when you need to. Tackling workforce toxicity isn't for the faint of heart, I know. No one really likes doing it. But it's one of the most rewarding things that you can do as a leader. And it's more prevalent today than ever because we're getting inundated with toxicity just from the world, from social media, from TV shows, from news media, all of those things. You as a leader, you're having to deal with that because people are bringing that energy, that mindset into the workplace. And real leaders, elite leaders, step into these things. Just a few takeaways I want to make sure we reiterate today. Toxicity has a profound cost on you, your team morale, your culture, productivity, retention, all of those things that we talk about that are important, we want to decrease. You need to look out for those subtle signs, just little underhanded comments, microaggressions, bullying, talking about people behind their back. And then you need to confront those behaviors privately and constructively. Look, if you or your team's ready to take the next step in an area like this, difficult conversations, start auditing your current team dynamics. Maybe grab a copy of my book, grab the tools from from talent lock conversation or C-squared conversation tactics that we talk about in there. Step into those conversations and begin to identify and address some of these underlying tensions or barriers. Leadership isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about creating an environment where everyone thrives. That's your number one responsibility as a leader. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Leave me a review, leave me a comment on YouTube or your favorite listening platform, or shoot me an email at mike@harborresources.com. Make sure you go grab a copy of my book, Quit Losing Talent, the expanded edition, on Amazon. And I'll leave you with one final thought from my end. When people know better, they do better. It's your job as an elite leader to make sure they know better. Hey, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Lead Up Podcast. Share this with your friends, colleagues, your boss, those bullies that need to hear it as well, and continue to tune in to the Lead Up Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.